We're doing it unmuted, it's not. Okay. 70, that's for the day. Thank you.
Let's go.
Oh my God.
Run.
Oh, you're fine. That's for this day. That's right.
We got him in, got him in first. And he's told. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, like, yeah. Thank you.
That many kids are well, I can. That's pretty.
And then you're really. You've.
And then we have a comprehensive list of all of those. We put costs in regards to all the different items. Reviewed the findings back in November of 2020. Okay, so committee findings. We're going to go ahead and have the committee talk a little bit about this. So if you guys want to start with our guiding principles, and then I'll go from there.
Oh, yes. All right, well, we are all volunteers. We're all community members. We all are vested in Pennfield. We love Pennfield as much as you and the rest of the community do. And so we don't have a formal presentation. We struggled knowing that we had a limited amount of money that we were going to attempt to suggest that the board present for later in the year. So we have far greater need than we have possible money available to work with. So in I can go with that. Don, do they have what's to that? And you slide off.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is to do with your prioritization, right? And so all the information was in the facility assessment. We listed them all in there that added up to the, I think it was 64 million.
Yeah, 64 point.
Yeah, with all the wants and wishes and everything. And then we said, if you had $30 million, what would you do with it? And so individually scenarios were put together. There was some more scenarios besides this, just these three gentlemen. And they can probably, maybe you can just share a little bit about some of those conversations, and I would say robust conversations, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we're looking at the different options, the entire list of everything that needed to get done, wanted to get done, we try to take that balance of longevity within the district of wants with needs, what should be replaced now and what needed to be replaced later, and really try to understand the meat and potatoes behind all of that to come with the recommendations that we did. Because there was a lot that we wanted to make sure that we hit. We didn't want it to be one-sided with only X building or only athletics or only this. We had this long list, and we really tried to make sure that we hit the areas that would be important for everybody, for as many people as we possibly could, which was difficult. And, you know, there's tough decisions that we made when we were looking at it, but I think we collectively came together and said, okay, if this is what I wanted to put from you all, what I'd be comfortable and what it was to then take it out to the community as well. So now we're kind of our guiding principle, it's the only that we gather, how does it benefit the district as a whole long term? And so that's what we really wrestled with, and we kind of came up with an option A and an option B. And how we got to the numbers that we got, we obviously wanted to give you guys the best information. Knowing that, you know, it may not fit for what you see as a board to do, but wanted to give it our all to make sure that you guys saw this from a community perspective, what we all brought to the table and could deliver to you guys as possible solutions. Either one we built.
All right, so
Now they all have a copy of this that you guys.
So we worked tirelessly for months trying to whittle down that $64 million worth of wants and needs to fit the $30 million proposal that we're bringing to you. And so we all, as was earlier mentioned, we all worked on this individually, did it numerous times, presented our proposals to the committee. Both Todd and David and Superintendent Simmons worked so well with us to help us. None of us really got everything we wanted, but we put together what we believe are our two best options to be considered by the board. The one is a very expensive one with one building, and that's to replace Dunlop. And And on the spreadsheet, it's option B1. And that eats up a lot of money to rebuild or a brand new building. And then I think I'm speaking for at least the members here, the option A1 was probably a preferred option. And that one was remodeling Dunlap at $8.2 million. But then we could touch every area in the district, every building, every roof, every parking lot, every air handling system. I think we did a really great job. We were able to touch on some of the athletics, not all the athletics, but we were able to, I think, do a wrap our arms around the district and clean it up and make it much better across the board with the option A1, which was the remodel of Dunlap.
I'm gonna kind of echo Bill here for a second. And I think honestly, option A to us was our best option. From our point of view, within the, 10, 15 people we have in our team, I think within the district, there's a lot of need that needs to be handled, such as, driveways, track and field. With option A, there's a lot more meat and potatoes that we actually handle, solve, and fix. Now, don't get me wrong, a nice, beautiful new school is great too. I'm not gonna go against that, but at the same time, what does this district really need? Is it a new school, or why not just take care of the ones we have?
Well, and an example of a big difference in the preferred method was we had money to replace the roof on used to be the old high school. Middle school. So I went here, so it's my old high school. We have the ability to actually replace the roof rather than to kind of move it down the road. Under building a new school, well, we can put a lot of money into the roof, but it's not going to be a new roof, and eventually it's going to need to be repaired.
And ultimately too is looking down the road is, this is great right now, is we also have to look at where would we be in 10 years? Again, rolling over this bond again, if we decide to do that, or the next committee that decide to do it, is where would we be? And we build another another Dunlap. Okay? You're gonna have to hit another middle school in 10 years, possibly. Who knows? But ultimately, looking at the long-term scheme of things, it was kind of a no-brainer, I want to say, for a lot of us, and what we needed to do, so that way we can position ourselves in the future, down the road, to be a better district even then. So.
Well, and a lot of it was looking at the continued work, and Todd mentioned it earlier, the stuff that Dewey's been doing within the district, and really trying to stop the constant patching or fixing or updating that continual cycle and going, okay, if we have this money, can we put it here and then not have to do that again? And then where can we take that money that's used for maintenance and where else can it go in the district, as opposed to having to continue to go, okay, this year we're gonna spend $50,000 on roof repair. Can we take that $50,000 and use it out for the upgraded HVAC units or the upgraded boilers? What happens when one of those boilers goes down? You have to go into the general fund, the emergency fund, or whatever it would be. Can we stop that from happening so that money can be earmarked for something else in the district? And I think that's what a lot of these conversations were geared around, was how do we position the district to not have to respond to an emergency, number one, but number two, how else can that money be used? How else can the board use that money? How else can the district use that money for other things later on down the road, instead of having to constantly repair a roof or whatever it would be? So I think we kind of looked at that part too, to really try to understand where is that money going today and where could it go tomorrow under the updates or new pieces that we've recommended.
And another point with the model for A is we had additional classrooms with the hope of being available for pre-K, for specials, so they won't have to move things around on carts. And we literally were trying to help every area in the district. And I think it was a struggle. I mean, it really was a struggle. I'll tell you, it got a lot easier when the federal government is providing money now for air handling systems. That opened up quite a bit of additional money for us to do things around the district.
The ESSER fund.
That's,
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
so we did, we shared with them the information about the ESSER funds. And so if you look at the top of the list there, the items that were in red, what we did is we still earmarked about $250,000 in each of those cases because of the knowing that the systems versus when we did the analysis in the budget post-COVID, the systems with the enhanced filtration and those kind of things that we said, maybe you do all the filtration in the units, and then if we need some extra funds to replace the boilers, we still left some money in the bond piece to make sure that whole thing could get done, okay? And then the other items that are yellow on the list, which were points of discussion in regards to, hey, what if we plug this amount? What could we plug in there? And so we just highlighted those in yellow to be able to say, that's not what the numbers were in gray, but there was some adjustments there. So if you guys want to maybe talk a little bit, maybe pick a couple of those in each scenario and kind of give them some backstory on it.
Yeah, so, and I'll go first with like the high school security, the secure entry. That was one of the original items, and I believe it was earmarked at 64,000, and that was to put just the secure entrance in. And then Dewey came in one of the meetings and said, okay, just recently, we have somebody who's spinning out in the parking lot, who's doing things in the parking lot. The cameras picked it up, and I can't read the make, the model, I can't read the license plate, I can't figure out who it is. How do we address things like that and go, okay, we could go in with the extra money that we could plug in here to be able to get a upgraded security system, one that would be able to capture the license plate numbers or be able to get to the things that needed to get to that aren't really addressed. So addressing security at more of a higher level than just a single facility with a high school. So we're able to kind of take that money and go, okay, how do we make it better than even what was asked for kind of originally?
Just to acknowledge Jared's efforts on that, that was just a comment that Dewey had made. And then when Jared came back with his recommendation, we're like, well, where did that money come from? And he goes, well, I did a little research and I remember Dewey mentioning this and how important this be. And so in my scenario, I thought, boom. And so then they had a conversation with the committee. So that's just an example of some good ways that they work together. Tyler, you got one that you want?
Yeah, I'm gonna touch on, we'll see there down in athletics, replace tennis, resurface only. Dewey actually went out and got a quote, was it last year, to get that tennis courts resurfaced instead of just replacing the tennis courts. Actually was significantly lower than what, replacing would be. So I think that'd be great for the district, having, essentially new courts.
Well, and being able to take that money, I can't remember, 150 or even more than that to do it. Doing and said, okay, do we need to do that? To go look at the actual structure of the.
There are weeds growing.
And that you actually have the structure up. The structure okay? The structure is okay. Then can we earmark money to go somewhere else and do the surface replacement to get rid of the weeds, to do what needs to be done? And is the actual structure okay? And then he came back and said, it is. We can make this everything that needs to be, but at a much lower cost. So that we can take that money and do something else with that money and still address exactly that, the weeds coming up or, and I just about 2 weeks ago did a tour with Dewey around the facility and looking at the track. And Bill, I know you're passionate about the track. And I think we all are, because it has not only a beautification side to it of making it look nice, but it makes us competitive. It makes us be able to hold the meets that we should be holding, doing the things that we should be doing. Can we then reduce maybe something somewhere else? So that way we can make sure that we can get to that. There's also a community side to it of, can we invite the community in so that they have a walking track? Do they have something that, let's say Lakeview or Harper has that that is appealing to the community as a whole, can we actually address that within Pennfield?
And that it's safe.
That it's safe to do so. So again, some of those conversations that we had of, okay, can we take money here and do this, or, replace it here and do that? Were all part of the conversations that we have.
And then an area that I put on my initial one and it made it to the final draft is technology. We don't have a specific amount, we put in a pretty good, and there's a lot of buildings, a lot of students, and I know there's a lot of need, but we have listed 1.5 million to upgrade the district's technology. And I'm not a technology salesperson, so I don't know exactly what that will buy. But I know that we need to continually update our technology in all areas. So that's an area that I felt was important, and after all of our discussion, it made it into the final draft.
I also want to point out that one that's not yellow, that was actually I think a good conversation we had was property purchase, north parcel. I don't know who brought it up, but looking towards the future, where we want to go, and tie it back into really option A, is where do you see ourselves in 10, 15, 20 years? Are we going to have a facility like Harper, like Lakeview? That's something that was
Flexibility.
exactly. That would mean bigger and better athletic fields, another school, 2 schools, who knows? Better roadways to the district, to the high school, to the middle school. That property was pretty high on our list. Secure.
Yeah, that was an original agreed upon item that we believe the district should pursue purchasing that property.
That's why that actually made it in both scenarios, and there's a lot of discussion about, do we need that if we do the new building, do we not need it? And again, just coming back, if you have property and it's adjacent and you have the opportunity, that was kind of where their discussion went, so.
Any other questions or what things are on here?
I got 2 questions. So, we talked about allocating money for the track and the stands and things like that. So that's kind of predicated around keeping the football field where it is, as is.
Yes.
Addressing, just like it says, the track, the stands, the concession.
Correct.
Okay. And then the second one, on the air quality, in the report, it speaks just kind of general about increasing the air quality. Are some of the buildings, is Purdy and North Penn, are those boiled or is one of forced air?
No, they're both.
So for the air,
Yeah, like, they're both.
When we get asked that, we have to go, okay, we've had this conversation, let's make sure that.
well, and that's great because it shows how much education you need for making structural decisions. What's important, what's not, you gotta know what you're looking at. So how are you guys proposing to increase the air quality through a boiler system?
Yeah, so the way that system would work, which we talked about, is potentially a separate project for them. So each classroom would get a vertical unit ventilator, right? So a big metal box in the room, and so that brings outside air in. It has filtration in it, and these units are gonna have 2 levels of filtration, so they're gonna be able to take the larger HEPA filter, but they're also gonna have
A MERV 17
Or
filter.
Yeah. But they're also gonna have
Air conditioning?
the electronic,
Oh, temperature controls?
no, filter, the electronic,
Oh.
yeah.
Electronic.
So,
Nice.
yeah,
And those are permanently mounted.
what's that?
Those would be permanently mounted.
Those are in the units, you don't even know that they're there.
The units themselves.
Yes,
would be
correct,
permanent.
yeah. And so what ends up happening is that the reason they need to be on the outside, because that's the air conditioner. And the other thing that allow Dewey to do with new temperature controls and that is you set the building up. And we just did this for Lakeview and their elementary schools over the past few years. So if there's a day without school, you just keep it in non-occupied mode. When it's school, you can get on the computer, you can change things. If you have a situation such as a pandemic or something like that, he can look how much outside air, am I maximizing the outside air? Because when it's 10 degrees below zero, you don't want to be maximizing your outside air because people are going to be cold inside. But yes, you could use those to be able to do that. So part of that 1.2 million per school was redoing the piping that needs to be replaced and putting units in all the classrooms. And then the boiler, which feeds the hot water to those, would be replaced. Okay. Whereas Dunlap is steam, correct? And so that's part of the reason with Dunlap, it's a little more expensive, but you want to get rid of the steam in the building and go to a hot water boiler and then change your pipes.
And I asked you about that when we did the tour, because I asked him, okay, what if we don't replace the boilers? He's done a great job of maintaining them, but what if they stay the way that they are? And it changes kind of how that configuration is done with the new system coming in. Because they still have to kind of regulate it kind of in two parts. They still have to regulate the boiler side, because it's an older technology, and coming into the newer side, how the heat and the AC would work would be only separate. Or if you replace the boilers, you get them on the modern boiler, where, you know, you're talking, some of the boilers are probably from where like Dana's sitting to the wall, and then the new boiler is probably half the size of that table. To be able to then say that these are updated, they work well and work consistently with the new HVAC systems. And then how come do those actually flow the energy usage for those? So the idea of still replacing the HVAC, still replacing the boilers is still high because they are so old. He's done a great job, don't get me wrong, but they're old, you know, and they need more addressing than.
And with the age of the boilers and the piping, then what happens is you get scaling in the piping. So we've seen this happen before where a district goes in and puts in a new boiler, right? And the next thing you know, the scaling is coming out, and then you're constantly going to your new units and trying to do maintenance on them because they're catching all of the scaling stuff.
Well, if you look at, what was it, middle school, I believe it was, one of the units drips. And it's expected to drip, and the reason why is the piping that runs through the boilers expands over time. You know, to have that constant expansion and contraction. And what happens is those tubes that are on the inside get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then they start to crack or have to be welded, and you can show it where, you know, the pipe was probably cracked that much. But they had to go this wide to be able to weld that and bring that in and fix that because it's such, the expansion was so big. So there's just a lot of extra maintenance that goes in and trying to maintain the old.
Well, another thing too, touch on, think about the cost savings. Yeah, we're gonna spend a lot more, but the cost savings alone would be astronomical for the district. Having to spend all that money on heating and cooling.
And comfort for
Exactly.
all students.
Especially like Purdy that doesn't have AC. So.
And we've been through the tunnels, we've looked at the pipes, there's nothing hidden with asbestos that we get into, and that's.
Yeah, there's gonna be some asbestos pipe covering that's gonna have to be abated and then.
We know about it, we have a price, or that's in there.
Yeah, it's in the budget, yeah.
Do you have another question? The second one?
Just real quick,
I'm sorry, Gina.
Oh, yeah.
These guys they wanna show off all the time.
with the price of the material being so volatile,
Yes.
the prices we have, are they up to date? I mean,
So if we can stay on pace for November and not move into 2022, I'm gonna say we're gonna be pretty close, right? Not enough that we had to redo the numbers, and I just talked to our estimators. I can tell you this, that we just did an update in our statistics. And in the last 3 months, we bid out about probably $150 million worth of work, and we were roughly 2 to 3% under our budget numbers that we had established, that have been established, you know, a year or so ago with escalation, because these numbers, we do put escalation and those kind of things in there. So, right now, steel is just starting to, it's plateaued. If you go to Menards or other places, it's still kind of fluctuating, but in the larger commercial industry, steel is kind of plateaued a little bit. So, right now it's a little bit more the availability of stuff. And so we've had to be a little creative. We had recently a school project where there was an alternate to do an addition, but we worked with the engineers to be able to approve bar joist and deck to come out of Canada because they had the capacity so that we could still, meet those needs. So, yeah, right now, yes, anything crazy happens after tonight, can't be held to that. Right now, we're still doing okay.
And are we sure that the two in red are the only places we can use our ESSER funds, or I don't know if that's a better question.
Well,
or-
it's actually gonna come up in this next,
Coming up in discussion.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
okay.
it'd be great, which I forgot to ask again, to go directly from this conversation into the ESSER fund conversation, because Todd is gonna be able to help share out there also.
Okay. Awesome.
So, yeah, that's kind of the plan. That kind of, I think, was the best fit on what we knew about the ESSER funds. And, maybe it was meant to be because the numbers were also just very similar,
Yes.
even though these numbers have been on for a while.
I swear that's it.
And just so you know, the ESSER funds and doing the air quality stuff, I could just start listing districts one off at a time that are all thinking the same way. So you're not like, oh, is this, unique? Are we hanging out there? What's the risk? This is happening across many districts, so.
So first and foremost, guys, I want to thank you guys for all your work.
Yeah, very helpful.
It's just awesome, CSM, Dave Martin, the bond committee all the way back into 2020. You guys have poured your hearts, we can see that. I appreciate it, from the bottom of my heart. You guys have looked at every aspect, you got to talk, to happen. Pennfield, and definitely look at those, that number one question is what's gonna help us through the next roughly at least 10 years. I think the biggest thing in some of our minds may be the difference between the remodel and a new school. I would ask, about the only question you don't have to answer tonight is I would like some ideas on what the remodel would consist of versus a new building. I've mentioned this before. Mr. Simmons and I have walked the building, and there's a lot of things in there that just aren't adequate. So I'd be curious if I'm gonna lean towards that remodel side to see what we're getting out of the remodel side.
It's more than what we already have on here. More than what we. So if you look at option A and the
Yep.
remodel, and then it includes kind of big bucket items that would be replaced under that remodel, would you want more detail than those? I just want to make sure that we have.
So that's just what the 8.2 would be, is that what I'm getting?
Yes, so we have the remodel and then everything underneath that would be a part of that remodel.
We're done.
And if you want, Jeff, you can go into the facility assessment and there's a little more detail to each of those.
Yep, I have all this.
Yep. I know, it's put you to sleep.
So, but it'll give us a little idea about what you're remodeling
Correct.
and what it's gonna look like when it's done.
Yeah.
Ish.
And the one thing that we do have, and again, obviously, any tours of the buildings, whatever, but we did go in, we came over with our drone and with a 360-degree camera too, and worked with Dewey, so we have, someone can just look at a picture of the gym and just be in the space, right? So we've done a few things like that to kind of get a sense, of that.
And that was really helpful for us, particularly some months ago when we weren't able to necessarily get into the building to take a look at it. And okay, when somebody goes into like the lab and says, hey, the floor in the gym isn't great. Well, to try to point down the floor and go, oh, that's what they the pieces of cable that's in the product. So that's made it very helpful for you to be able to go, okay, yeah, that's what you need.
I think you guys understand where I'm getting at.
Yes.
There's a lot of things that need to be fixed in there.
if we're gonna look towards the remodel versus a new building. Well, that's one of the things when you look at that building, I'm gonna use the term, it's kind of sterile, right? I mean, it's block. It has areas in it that don't have a lot of windows and those kind of things. And so those things are not being addressed, right? It's flooring and paint, has a good roof on it, and it's mainly mechanical. And then the gym floor, right? It had some other newer upgrades that have been happened before, but there is some exterior skin, some of the ethos and some of those things on the outside that needs to be taken care of.
So that, getting back to the ADA, like looking at it, just unlocking, so then right building, you know, block, okay, on either side, whether it's the remodel or the new building, making sure that those are fixed up, repaired, making them not only compliant, but frankly look nicer. I mean, they're just old nasty bathrooms, you know, and that it's hard to go, okay, just leave those alone. You know, that's part of the reason why they're in the remodel as well. So they're just, they need to, bottom line, they just need.
So one of the things I would offer, we just have to work it into the timeline piece, but certainly David and I have both talked that, you know, as you guys go through and you have any questions, we come back and ask those. We could set up some small group walkthroughs of any of the buildings if you want as board members to go, you know, you want us to address anything specific, just so we get into the details of what's in the facility assessment. Happy to do that.
So this is more of a talking piece now for the community and for it to go out and come back, which is why the bond exploratory community forums are going to occur also.
So are these numbers still kind of like floating numbers or moving numbers? Like, for example, like, you know, I'm just gonna be the devil's advocate because I've done this before. Somebody's gonna say, well, you're gonna spend $3 million on the football field and you're only gonna spend $75,000 on tennis. So, I mean, because if you start adding those numbers between the track and the football and the concession, that's $3 million. You want me to spend $3 million on athletics? So I'm just wondering, are these numbers, I mean, this is what I was faced with last time, both times. And why do I want to put $3 million toward athletics or just football? Because in their mind, even though it's the track, it's football. That's what they see. That's what they see. Yes.
And it's not.
So in my mind, I want to be able to have some talking points because as a tennis mom, I would love to see not only resurface, I would love to see windscreens purchased because FYI, I don't know if you ever watched tennis. Our tennis it's like, so you get a one windy day. You can't. He had them, they got so they got all eaten up by mice. So we need new. Right. So like those are the kind of things that we need added. Like those are the kind of things. I would love to see. I mean, I'd love to see like some type of rest facility out there. Like because I see on here you're demoing the church, but right now that's the only place to go to the bathroom out there. So where are you supposed to go to the bathroom if you just drove from Brunson and now you have to go to the bathroom? You're gonna go behind the bus garage? Like, where are you gonna go? So these are like that.
I would not suggest.
If I may, real quick, and I forgot to kind of touch on it, I did send you guys an email, probably about 5:30, right? I haven't got it, of the wish list. So there's like 5 columns to kind of configure however you guys want. These are all, talking with David, I don't want to take you guys' talking with David a lot lately. These are all ideas that have been presented.
So they're
so it's not necessarily that they.
That's
want to go. Okay. It's somebody has said.
Okay, that's my question. Yeah. Right, that's my question.
So they come together concepts. As far as the numbers themselves, yes, those are the values based on that scope.
Those are
If someone says, well, geez, can't we do it for less? Couldn't we do something for
Right.
this? We could have that conversation. But based on the scope and the things that come on facility assessment, those are the numbers, those are the pieces of the puzzle. The idea is to go to the community forums and start testing that,
Okay,
right?
that's,
And have
that's
people,
what I'm asking.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
And that's what, so I spent the last 2 weeks or so over break, having those exact conversations with people that I know in the district and running them through and saying, hey, take a look at A and B, take a look at this, what ideas do you have? Does this make sense? What's not clear, what is clear? And really kind of getting an idea of discussions of what are other people, what do they want to see versus maybe what we listen. So we're having those conversations.
Well, another thing, talking point that, you know, we were made aware at the very beginning, this whole, what, I think we're at 4 or 5 months now, was there would be no new school taxes. There would not be a raise in school taxes within the district. I'm not sure that they had a slide or not, showing up the graphs.
Continuation.
Yeah.
Just a continuation, so there'd be no new taxes, anyone within the district.
And I think that the part that I personally would continue to go back to is the community aspect of it. When, I mean, this is, and I hate to say the word sold, I don't want to sell this to somebody, but in the end, that's what we're trying to get people to rally behind something and going, how do we use this as a community, right? I think that's the piece. If you look at the Lakeviews and the Harpers, what have they been able to do when they've done it? As it's been the community. It's what can we do outside of the normal, school day? What's outside of the normal athletic day? How else do we use this? How can we make this a community area? How do we make it inviting to the community? How do we bring more community in? Because at some point, this conversation is gonna have to happen again. And if we bring this to you and you guys make whatever adjustments you make and then it does go and it passes, or even if it doesn't pass, somebody's gonna have to have this conversation again, and then you wanna be able to go, okay, we were successful here, what didn't work, what did work, because it's a conversation that, we'll have to have again at some point. And how do we make the community a part of that? So that 10 years from now, or whenever it is, we can go, okay, how do we do that again? Or can
So
we?
this would be the kind of information that you share with the community. And so currently, your tax levy through 2028, if you do vote, you guys choose to go with the bond and then the bond gets voted in, then that extension gets out, instead of 2028, it gets out to 2038. So it's a 10-year extension, and then it starts to fall off. And it pushes your bond out, which comes off and totally would come off in 35 right now, and that would be 52. But as you know, most districts are managing these graphs, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Because right, wrong, or indifferent, that's the world that we're in with student funding, and you have facilities that you gotta take care of, and sinking funds and bonds, villages is where you're forced to do it. Like to point out too, it was interesting because, Jared, right from the beginning, like, I don't like sale, I don't like the word sell and blah, blah, blah. And through this process, right, he's like, but I know, right, like, it's information, right?
Yeah.
And I know that Dana's dealt with this before, and what we wanna make sure is that the information is out there, and we have to all work together to get it to people. We don't wanna hear that, hey, I didn't know that, right? No one gave us that information. No one's hiding anything. It's there. We want to show people the numbers.
I'm glad there's something in here for a tennis mom. And no, I'm totally serious, because that's what we try to do with number 8, is we try to touch everything. And so, but if you think the windscreens are important, which I wouldn't know about that, put it on the list and feed it up to us but we try to put something that everybody can get behind. And I know athletics, like I heard, I voted for it, but we put something for everybody in here. We know it will improve the district, and we're gonna be your biggest advocates in the community. And we're gonna be there.
Unbelievable work. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have these numbers been released to the public yet?
No, that's what we're talking about now, is that we should be able to host and have these
I think
conversations.
the first thing is gonna be when everyone's saying, she's looking at the first.
So even in the PowerPoint tonight, which I think is viewed, it's preliminary, and the bottom wasn't there. You guys have seen this. And so you guys are like, this is good.
I think we should be very careful and talk about releasing this until after we go into closed session. And I can tell you more about that at that point, but I don't think we should release these yet.
And again, that's up to you. The idea is the next steps would be doing the community input forums, and you can see the first one of those was scheduled for April 22nd. So, and that's why you haven't came up here and asked me.
We can wait until the next week's board meeting, right? To
I think another really
can-
important point
finalize it next week.
if
We need
our
to.
community with this bond proposal
I don't- Just,
is how are we gonna maintain what we do?
Mhm.
Because I think that's something that has hurt us in the past, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because there's different feelings on that. What I see and what we saw going through compared to other districts, pretty good, right? You guys have been able to do some investment along the way, and there's been some maintenance and stuff up. But like with all districts, there's certain things that people have just had to make decisions on.
Mhm.
Like maybe it's the roof on the middle school, right? Or maybe it's the parking lot situation, right? You go over to Purdy, right? And you pull in there and you pull in on asphalt that's like all alligator, and then 30 feet later, you're on brand new asphalt, right? So it's like you're doing what you can, but sometimes those decisions about where do we put it, and you know, there's always criticism one way or another, but from a consultant end that works with many districts, the situation you didn't have enough bonds along the way to do everything. So when you think about some of the boilers and some of those things, again, you've done such a great job over the years that it's kind of like they still look good, right? They're working. So even though you can't buy parts or anything for them anymore.
Now, can you elaborate a little bit, what are you looking for?
It's not me, it's what I hear in the community,
Yes.
you know?
In what sense of the documentation of them? So that way we can prepare, that way if something.
Well, like you said, the middle school roof, you know, the boilers, these things like so if we put this new in, you know, and it's gonna be for a while, so we're just gonna replace it in the future again, like, in the meantime, you have to maintain, which I agree, Dewey's done a great job for Pennfield District. I'm not doubting that. But sometimes people just ride down the road and they look and they are judgmental about windscreens or football equipment getting left out in the field that should be put away. It's not really like, they don't see the boilers, but they do see things like what Dana mentioned.
When things aren't put away properly, the other stuff.
Or, you know, coming to a game and the concession building. Like, those are things our voters use.
Well, you could get
You know, they're not in the first grade, they're not in the first grade classroom sweating all day. You know what I mean?
it would be cool if there was a way to message, like, we all know in this room, what a good job that Pennfield has done over the years maintaining what they have. It would be cool if there was a way to message that. I don't know how to, but I think that's part of it is.
So if you guys choose to move forward, right,
Yeah.
especially with COVID, it's all taught us, not necessarily to how to use social media, but to use it differently and more strategically. And I think it's also taught us how to interact with it a little bit more as well. And so Lakeview's done some pretty neat stuff recently with some videos. And I've worked with another district that did the same thing, using, you know, teachers or alumni and giving it's just facts, giving a message about the facility and their experience and those kind of things. So I think there is a way to really do that, and it can become, it's information. Right? And so what happens if you decide to move forward, there's two types, right, of campaign. There's an informational campaign, and then there would be a community campaign, like a yes committee. And so some of the messages can be the same. Certainly the yes committee is much more of a hard, you know, yes, to kind of get people behind the vote, to vote yes. And so that's, if you guys choose to move forward, that's the strategic and I'm putting these guys in the spot when we talked about it with this committee, is that there is interest then with some of them to move forward if you guys choose to.
And a part of the superintendent's goals coming next meeting, next week, the informal update is facility plan B.
Oh, yeah,
which is
that's right.
supposed to be if the bond doesn't pass, but it's also used as the bond passes, how do we continue to, care for those things that are new so that they continue to last?
Excellent.
And again, like, commercial buildings, the stuff in commercial buildings typically last longer, than homes, but, I built my house in Pennfield 23 years ago, and I just put a new furnace in. Right?
Yep.
And I was pretty lucky getting 23 years on. Now the boilers are from the 70s.
At least.
So I've read these. So yeah, so I mean, most of our boilers are gone 50 years. Yeah.
And I asked Louis specifically about that, what is the general life cycle, right? Well, what do you usually get out of it? 30, 35 years is counted at the top, and to get where they've gone. And I think that's the kind of the messaging is
Yeah.
how well that's been done, over the years.
And that's one thing I gotta commend you guys on too, is in this is the normal wear and tear. You guys have that in there. Of a hot water heater, whatever, for example. We may have a hot water heater that's lasted for 20 years and a normal hot water heater for me only lasts like 10. So, yeah. But I just, I'll take you guys to get one information. If you guys don't mind, that same wish list sheet I've sent out to everyone. If you guys don't mind, can we kind of sketch some stuff on there? Kind of our own ideas and you guys, work they get.
We have another meeting Thursday night.
Correct.
With Chester. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah.
But to be clear, we're not okay in the sheet to be released, right?
Okay, you guys are in control of that. Oh, so why they're here, Tim? Is that the one thing you're worried about, the time?
Yeah.
Would you like to amend to remove that dollar amount on there?
Unless we can work it out, until we go into closed session. But yeah, that is the big deal.
Right.
I mean, we're not in a hurry. The idea is by the 22nd is when we want to start reviewing that stuff. Because like anything, you don't want to you just don't want to put it out there without some explanation and some background, right? Yeah. So,
In support, in support.
yes,
So we will have this on next week's agenda. Okay, so vote and approve, and then this can go up. Perfect. Is that fair enough?
and if we need to make an adjustment, we'll have time. Because that's what, the 19th and
Exactly.
22nd, Thursday, right?
That's correct.
Awesome.
Awesome.
I think you're right.
Awesome.
Thank you.
I'll let you back. I can hear you. You want me to stay for the?
Yeah, so I'm gonna ask, Jeff, if that'd be another one that you move the ECHR fund so that conversation, Todd can also speak to that.
Okay, so 3.02 is done. Does anyone have a problem of moving to 3.04? Okay, so we'll go to 3.04, ESSER fund / air purifiers.
And that would be Dewey and Todd that'll be able to speak to. But I can give the big picture is that we have the air purifiers that we did the actual video to, that here's some of the things that we're already doing. And then the ESSER fund came into play. Actually, that's Angina also, because she shared the numbers at the last meeting. That's to some 3.8 million. Is that right? No. Yeah, 1.2, 2 point.
ESSER
2.3.
2.3.
2.3 million that's available. And that the actual heating and cooling, that piece, we talked about the K2 buildings. And so Todd has information he can share out as to what that could look like and a timeline that could be on if we wanted to go ahead and take the 2 K2 buildings and do that work to where we can get that completed. And as Angina shared from before, and the information that was sent out in the email, the ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 funds can be used for air quality.
Is that 2.3, right? Is that before or after the 20% that they would like us to use for remediation?
Good point. That is after?
I believe it was after, I don't have my finger pull up here, but it was after, because I knew there was 20% that had to come out of that.
Okay, because I was thinking 1.9 or something with the number.
Like it's for three.
Okay,
And this is the ESER two and the ESER three.
Okay.
added together.
got it. Thank you very much.
Tyler, if you would share with
From a
me,
timeline.
yeah, from the timeline and then the conversation and dialogue about the actual air purifiers, were those machines that were being suggested, then that conversation come back to the board again. Even with this, it's kind of like the same conversation.
Okay, so if you guys choose to move forward and use the ESSER funds, and then we shift this forward. So Board of Education, approved expenditures, we plugged in 419, which is next week. Develop concept design, check, budget, that would happen, through, June. And then the construction documents, the bid documents would be put together. That would happen, over the summer into, well, basically July, August, September. We would, try to go out to bid October, November timeframe. And then if we could go out in October, November timeframe, get those bids in before the end of the year. We may even be able to start some work in the schools. And we did this actually over at Lakeview at the district, where we were able to go in off days and shift work and actually hang pipe hangers and get some things started. And again, it depends how the bids come in, but you want to try to do some of that, because what we want to do is make sure then by the end of the summer of 22, that those air conditioners can come online and work. If we had enough money in that we could do the boilers and that didn't need to be pushed, those boilers can be started up, later in September or early October. But one of the key things with these air units, putting them in, is with air conditioning, it's electrical. So there's electrical service work that has to be done at the schools to make sure that those things are up. And so what would happen is get started with some stuff, say February, March, and the boilers would typically shut down probably mid-May. Again, every year is a little bit different. All of a sudden, we all move grass. I like the weather, but who wants to do that actually? That way, some of the piping demo and some other things can get started. Then we have to do, the electrical service shutdown and turnovers will have to be out and those kind of things. So ultimately that gets a project, completion, for, I would say, the air conditioners to be up and the filtration to be up for the beginning of school. And then, on the heat side, that would have to be done until, end of September if you.
So that's fall 2022.
And what we talked about with those vertical unit ventilators, that's a pretty typical approach, especially in elementary schools where there's one per classroom. Sometimes there's ductwork. You don't necessarily have to. I think we figured these just coming out the top, which is what was done over in Lakeview as well. And then it's having the new controls. You've got the better control of fresh air, then you do have the ionization filtration as well as the HEPA. So what happens is, recently we actually we're just doing this right now over in Marshall at Hughes Elementary, because they had some funds, and we actually bid that out last fall, and got started with that. And that's where one of the conversations we had about your temporary units, because they were using some temp units there while we were working towards getting that done, because they had a donor that helped with some of that. And so, but the challenge is with some of the temp units, and Dewey and I looked at it, and I kind of ran some numbers, and you could spend $20,000 a school year just on filters on those temp units, because that's filtering different than if you're using the unit ventilators where you've got the outside air and all that. So, I think it was a great idea that you guys had to be able to say, hey, if we have those funds, instead of spending it here, does it make sense to do this and address it into a permanent solution? And again, we have a number of districts that are looking at the same thing, so.
And the solution that we're looking at for this will work regardless of the timeline of a bond. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay,
Which became a part of that discussion with the committee,
yeah.
is taking out 2.4 million. What else could you use with that?
Right.
Which then came into that option one where you loaded in some extra, and option two.
I just wanted to make sure that the installation of these didn't require us to do something further down the road that we might not have funding for.
Yeah.
That would be
That's all.
the only thing,
Yeah.
would be whether the funds cover enough to do the boiler in this phase or not. And if we didn't do the boiler, those boilers are a little newer than some of the other schools, but we probably do some added filtration, in regards to that, to make sure if we're putting new pipe and have an older boiler, we want to really be careful of that. But no, it's not really requiring, again, if you do this, you have to end up
Okay.
doing this down.
All right.
Yep, good question.
So just to be clear though, the 2.4 was to take care of the boiler and AC.
So that's what I was saying, the 2.4 was what we put in the budget originally, that was pre-COVID. And so those units, when you add the ionization and the HEPA filters in it, those units are running about $1,500 more a unit. And so then, trying to think what else it affected something else. So the idea there was that's why when we did that bond spreadsheet,
There's still some money left
a
that,
little bit of money
need to
still left in the
cover.
bond in case the 1.2 per building didn't cover. Okay. The boiler would have been one of the things that we could say, we'll do that. Background. So it should be close, but.
Yeah, so again, Todd touched on it, the consensus of our mind, talking about the portable units was, we'd like to spend our money a little bit more wisely, something more permanent. Luckily, we're working on the bond. These guys are working on the bond right now. And it just so happens to have those numbers for us. And like Kevin touched on, it just so happens that our ESSER funds is pretty darn close to the amount to be able to do this. So one thing you touched on was the bond. Yes, this would be separate from the bond. With approving this now, we get a
head start on it.
Yes.
we get a good 6 months
Yeah.
head start.
I think that's great.
And we can address.
But again, like to Abby's point, it's a standalone type thing, right? Like if someone came up and handed you $2.4 million and said, where would you put it? I guess that's the other piece too. You guys test this, but it sure felt like out of the prioritization of the things that you guys have talked about, what we've heard in the community, that those are the schools and that would be the thing that would be priority.
Is air quality, absolutely.
At those two schools.
And luckily, we're able to address air conditioning also.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can give a personal testimony because I'm at a Lakeview Elementary, and just like those units, not only is it like the hot months, August, beginning of September, May, June, way more comfortable with the cooling, but throughout the winter, we don't have that inconsistency. It's not getting too hot in one room and too cold in one room. It's very steady and even, and I appreciate it as a teacher.
Okay, and the decibels, not a problem.
No.
I don't know.
They're not low.
The ones that we have like the sound kit on, but yes, because that's always a question,
I don't know if you touched on it too, but these can be ran all year. Winter time, you can close the outer flap and it will filter the air in the classroom. So we can, these can be used.
And you can always control how much outside air, so that's the good part is because we love living in Michigan, right? And all of a sudden you get a 70-degree day in March, like you may need it might be nice to get a little air conditioning, or at a minimum, you can at least bring in some more outside air, because it's not costing you a fortune to heat it, so.
In the purchase of the big blue box units that we're talking about, that 53,000 plus the 20,000 we talked about putting the filters in there for the whole year. I would recommend that you set that aside and let that be a part of that K2, the whole package. But you don't have to, it just means it's gonna be an extra cost that would be coming out of the general fund instead of the ESSER fund, just taking care of this piece.
Those were already from ESSER funds, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
and that's, so we're talking about. So we're saying, instead of using it for that funding, that we move it toward the K2 buildings.
Yeah.
This goes away.
Yep.
You don't choose to do that for them, but. Yeah,
And the greatest part, I think, is one, we are investing in our bond.
Mhm.
We are moving forward in the hopes that our community will stand behind us in this bond and what we need from it. We can not only invest in that, but address a lot of, again, all of our concerns, which is the air quality, the AC.
Yep.
And
I think it's a great, yeah.
well, it goes for teachers and students out in both K2 buildings. And from when we first started talking about the bond, we were able to have it generate a little bit more money, which helps, because the first time we were going through this, it was kind of like, man, if we could just come up with another 2 or 3 million.
Yeah.
That's all.
You get 30, oh, that's that. So we had a whole bunch of other issues, and then we went back to the committee and said, here's a what if scenario. What if you had 2.4 more? What would you do with those? And that was one of the most trying work sessions with that group. I mean, they take such responsibility for that. And it's like, where do you put it and how do you get the most for it? And so,
Great.
your questions, Dave, like, they're ready to answer those
That's what I love.
questions, which is important. And it's not like you can do that with everything, but when someone says wind curtains at the tennis court, you go, okay, we'll figure out how to put that into the scope of work, right? That's not tens of thousands of dollars for something like that, but you can't always do that with everything. So gathering that stuff in that wish list is an important step, and then we'll go ahead and review that with the committee as well, so.
Okay.
Anything else for me? Awesome.
Thank you very much.
I was gonna say. I was saying.
He's on.
All right. Awesome. So that will be up for a vote next week as well. We'll step back, we'll go to 3.01, the transportation LOA. Mr. Simmons, would you like to
Yes.
share our thoughts and helping out the transportation?
Yeah, we've had drivers who have called in for whatever reason, being sick. We've had situations to where we've had to co-man a bus, meaning that driver and all kids. But calls 3 or 4 days out of the week are going out in the morning to tell parents, hey, your child's gonna be 45 minutes to an hour before we need a second bus route to come and pick them up. So that's a situation we started trying to address in numerous ways. Michelle has gone about trying to consolidate routes, and she's gotten to where she's consolidating routes. And then we have another driver that would call in. So we got to the situation of, okay, we really need to have an extra 1 or 2 drivers so that when this occurs, we don't have to send out this message to all the parents saying, sorry, but if your kid rides this bus, they're gonna get another 45 minutes later. So I started talking with Dean Transportation because I knew that they said, if you pay us for a certain route, we will go and drive that route for you. Now, Dean is a third-party company So there was some frustrations that came with transportation and the actual drivers saying, "Man, you're trying to move in, you're just trying to take our jobs." The whole situation was more about, we need to get kids to school on time. We need to stop with the 3 and 4 days a week to where these calls are coming, parents getting frustrated, and kids are losing, opportunity to learn time in the classroom. So when that was posed to them, then they said, yes, let's go ahead and we can do that. So we had 3 special needs buses. Those 3 buses were going to the same location that Dean was already taking kids to. Doris Paulson, Battle Creek, WK, and Battle Creek Central High School, and then another bus that was going out to Marshall. They have buses that are already going in those directions. So we were going to say, hey, you know what? You just take these 3 routes. That'll free up 3 bus drivers, and we can just go ahead and fix the situation. The 3 drivers for those 3 routes got highly upset, along with talking with other drivers, and it became a situation where they said, well, we're just gonna quit. Well, that would not help the situation. It was more of a, this is my route, instead of a right to the position of driving that route. I'm saying it was a privilege. You're hired as a driver. So if you change from a special needs route just for the remainder of the year and give you a bus route that has a full load of students, then you're helping the district and we're helping the district so we can stop making these calls. And they said, no, we're out. So got a phone call from a different bus driver and said, well, you know, if you could just do, instead of trying to create subs, why don't you try to create those subs and have Dean drive those routes? And just keep the special ed route with the bus drivers, because if 3 leave, then we're just digging ourselves deeper in the hole, because now we got 3 more routes we have to come and pay for it. So we said, okay, let's try that. And on Monday, we'll make contact with Dean and see if they can actually drive a regular route and actually pay them to drive and pay that route. Take 2 drivers, take their routes, and Dean, you can drive those. Dean informed us today that, yeah, we can't do the regular route. And I'm going, okay, I think I understand why, but when they explained it, they already had buses going to these other places.
Yeah.
And so they were just picking up kids and going to the same place they were already going. But now what we're asking is, we want you to give us your driver in your bus and run this route for us.
Yep.
And then we've got a sub driver. And they were going, we don't have that person.
They don't have it either.
They don't have it either.
Yeah.
So we are, an LOA was supposed to be created so that we're able to, well, let's just say it was created. So now to be able to ask the board that we sign off with approval for that LOA. Well, as of today, that LOA was supposed to be signed. I've already signed, but they haven't turned it back in. So I'll be making a recommendation that we take a look at the next meeting at RFP. And this situation is not gonna go away until we get into the fall of 21-22. And we need to look at, if we're gonna look at an RFP for transportation, we may as well go ahead and look at the custodial, because that has been a conversation since I got here. And grounds. There's a certain part of the grounds and maintenance that we may as well look at an RFP for also. So if we roll out all 3, now I'm just mentioning that now because as I sit here, we still don't have an LOA for transportation. And they can come in tomorrow and say, we have it, here you go, it's fine. But Dean's not able to do it. But there's other companies like X and another company that would say, well, if you would ask us, we're able to do that. We actually have a driver and a bus that we can do. But I hadn't asked the other companies yet because we just got the word today that Dean said they couldn't do it.
So your first choice is to get the LOA and look for a company that can actually do that.
Yes, thank you for great.
Okay, and then your second choice is you're just gonna muscle it through for the next 6 weeks.
Yes,
Okay,
and our parents are going to, and our kids. Oh,
you don't have a choice, yeah,
We're gonna be struggling.
yeah.
We're on the struggle bus. As we say.
It's gonna be us. And it's unfortunate, I mean,
It is.
I mean,
there's nothing to do about it. I think that, yeah, those bus drivers are working just as hard as they can.
Yes.
So,
But it's really caused, and again, there's still COVID situations that occur. There's personal, whatever reasons that, I mean, we all have personal, if you're taking a child to the doctor, there's issues
right.
that occur.
I think we've had a series of years where we've had, things happen.
Yes.
And bus drivers have illnesses or things beyond their control. So when we looked at that, just a couple of things, I'm a little, I think we need to talk more about RFPs for services and how strategically that's gonna field for a bond.
Yes.
Because it's it's a very sensitive issue generally.
Yeah.
It has been in the past year. I'm just not sure if that timing is gonna be right. We probably want to think about that really careful.
I have to agree with that, especially specifically like the whole, our food service.
Yeah.
Like, I know there's people who are super happy with the fact that, our food services.
Well, right, so I just to comment on that, I don't know exactly this.
No, you're fine. So just a comment, not that we're saying that there's a problem here, problem here, problem here. I have asked what to help prepare when we start looking at budget for June.
Yeah,
So if we have that budget, we would do a presentation of this, what it costs to mow the new grass, whatever.
right,
And, you get 3 bids and choose like the board has done before.
right, and that's what I'm saying is when we've done that before, it's been caused a lot of, it's been a very sensitive issue that, just as far as the timing.
And I totally understand, but at the same point in time, you're doing
Yeah,
a budget.
that's fine.
You have to price it.
Mhm. Absolutely,
With anything.
I-
I mean,
I don't disagree with that.
yeah, it's, again, I want to make it a point that we're not, I don't think any of us are necessarily looking to go an alternate route, but at the same point in time, we have to
We really should every few years, price compare.
We have
I-
to do our due diligence.
Yeah.
We have to do our due diligence and get pricing to see if, and just an option. It may not be the cheapest or the
Yeah.
whichever, if we still wanna.
And we'll approach it with the utmost sensitivity
Yeah,
and professionalism. So
Yeah.
we're not trying to, understanding that it is going to be something that is gonna feel like someone's intruding upon someone's livelihood.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So did you have 3 bus drivers that just up and quit?
We had 3 that up and quit,
Did they come back to that?
and then they came back because we were going, hey, well, there's certain things that we need to do in order for you to return.
Okay,
And we did those things and addressed it.
okay.
And now we're looking at the fact that what we thought was just utilize some of the regular routes, 2 of them, to create. But then today we got Dean saying, yep, we're not engaged.
So you don't have a plan yet?
Correct. We are really trying to work the corners on this one.
Yeah.
In as many angles as we can.
Yeah, I get it. Okay, well, it is what it is.
We are trying to work, as diligently as possible. With transportation and any options that we could possibly do to avoid those nuisance text messages and Facebook messages and 6 o'clock in the morning. It's gonna be late.
Yeah, we are not just sitting and saying we're okay with that, because we are not.
So bear with us. We're trying to work with everyone and anything possible to make sure our busing is getting your students and getting them to school.
Yes.
All right. No action there because there's no LOA. Correct. Moving on, 3.03, van quotes.
Yes. And I will ask Angina, she will help with this one. The 2 banners that we've discussed, I would even say, even as of today, we had a situation where the same thing with the drivers. And there are a couple of events that there's no drivers to take kids to tomorrow. And if one of those teams that can be attendance for, the baseball team, they're trying to leave early to get to the events. And there's no bus, there's no drivers,
Because they're still on their routes.
because they're still on the routes.
Dates.
So the question came up with, or should I say, the discussion of piece is, yeah, we could purchase another bus. We could even do, which we already have one bus that's purchased, that's on its way. And each year, we're always doing two buses to do them in rotation. Whereas Jeff mentioned earlier, we're now looking at what's coming up in June for the budget to put in 2 buses. Or do we eliminate the 2 vans? And then it becomes 2 buses.
So I have a question that kind of goes back, and maybe this is inappropriate to jump back to the transportation thing, but if we do an RFP and we end up outsourcing it because we can't maintain it, do we stop buying buses? I mean, how does that work? I'm just-
There's a couple different models, right?
Right.
And one model that they'll use your buses, and in that model, it leaves you with the option to move back into a situation at some point.
Okay.
And another model, you sell them your buses.
Okay, I didn't know.
So there's a couple of options. Did I say that right?
Yes,
Yeah.
and which is great, because you bring up that point, because now it comes to the vans question again.
Yeah.
Is the, because you've already approved the purchase of the 2 vans.
Right.
And so now here's the quote, because the bid came back for the 2 vans. It still takes 3, 4 months before they actually create the vans,
Build them.
build the vans, and then be able to deliver them. So that's why this is still a question, because we need the board to decide if we're going to actually go ahead and purchase those vans. or not.
So remind me again on these vans, so say, like, let's pretend that I drive one of these vans, so like, I'm just gonna say like, they want me to drive a van because there's only one coach. I'm covered completely by the school's insurance, or by signing a form, how does it work?
You're covered by your own insurance, your own vehicle insurance. It always works with your own personal.
So then what happens if I crash and 3 kids break their legs because I'm driving them? I'm just curious. I'm wondering, or like, so say Tim's driving, he breaks our kid's leg. His insurance covers my kid's leg first, and then his school covers my kid. I'm just.
Talking about broken legs.
I'm just.
Are you feeling a little personal about
Then would it make my personal insurance go up?
I don't, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like,
Absolutely.
I'm gonna use my examples, like.
Who sell what?
And
And my whole thing is.
Indiana did some research on that, right? Yeah.
That's what I'm just asking.
I could go back and as we go further, further on and stuff, but it was, so your personal insurance, what you're covered through for your car insurance, that's what covers you first. And then the school comes in after that, after what would be covered on that. Now going through the scenario with the kids and all that stuff, so if like a kid was injured, would that hit your insurance? I didn't ask.
It feels like that would be the school's insurance because they're on a school bus.
just like if they was going to that.
Yeah,
But we won't get.
but you want to get clarity. Yeah.
I thought maybe that's just my personal thing, but like, I think that would be a question that a coach might have.
For sure. And it's also different if you're an employee of the school district or volunteer.
Yeah.
So that would be good to just have that clear on how is it working
And
for
if you're
employees. Right.
Like,
Right.
like, if I'm like driving, and like, say Jeff, like, say Rob's like, hey, Jeff, I need to pick up a man, because you can't, there's more than 10 players on the baseball team.
Right.
So if I'm driving a team as a parent, do I have to have a chauffeur's license?
No,
Not on a small van. If it was gonna be a 15 passenger, you did.
And then,
What we would require a background check.
Yes, yes.
There is a transfer, but there is a policy right now, a board policy about who can drive buses or vans. So I think it would, Yeah. Yeah. so there's a policy, there is a policy.
And that was usually your own vehicle.
Your own vehicle, though, and how the school issued vehicle, that's what I asked.
For the insurance, who are you gonna get clarification through the truth or?
No, Setsag is our insurance.
Okay.
So we already asked them on the 15
Yeah.
passenger van.
Or you can't transport any kids by law on anything larger than what's rated for a 10-passenger. So like even if you did a 15-passenger van, you don't have 10 seats in it, it's only 10 people going, it has to be what the van is actually rated for. So nothing higher than a 10-passenger rated vehicle.
Yeah, and they won't even
It's
insure it.
because they're not safe. It's because they're not safe.
Right.
Yeah.
When you get the clarification, would you please clarify medical coverage versus liability coverage? The liability would be the huge issue.
Okay.
So then, the question is, should we still get them or not because you're thinking about other options for the bus transportation in general? But regardless of that, wouldn't you, it seems like it would still be useful to have those vans owned by us. I mean, no matter who's doing bus transportation, you're still gonna find a use for those two vans.
Especially when you're talking about a teacher who is, got some special needs students and they do with life skills. You
Yeah.
teach them how to go out and shop and do a budget. A number of the teachers, they have that opportunity and they take them out to, like Biner Park Zoo or some field trips. Some of them do that with their
Or
class.
like the debate team or the tennis team. I think there will always be those opportunities to use the bus.
Well,
Tennis team's 12.
Yeah, you have to take both vans.
even if we did, put out the transportation to a private company, but we had the vans, that would be, your special runs would be outside of that contract. So
Absolutely.
they'd be an additional cost that we'd be saving.
Yeah,
Correct.
for sure.
But am I looking at this correct? We passed the date to order a 2021 model, so now we have to wait until the 2022 models are out at the end of October?
No, I think it's not that they'll be out in the end of October. I think that's when they were saying, October is when they're saying that we would, I don't think that we're waiting to order the 2022. I think we just,
It's gonna take that long to get it.
Okay.
and the one thing on the quote was, so there's two different things here. The 75,200 was for the two vans that you guys were just discussing and that Kevin was discussing about for the transportation. Then there's also, we're also asking, we wrapped it up into the same RFP, but we do need a van that currently is being used by food service and maintenance. So right now we have a box truck that we use, but it's old, it's the repairing and everything is just getting so costly to repair it. We found we don't really, you need the capacity of the box truck. We aren't really filling that size of something. So one of these vans, so that's the 36-2. So, and I think those can be approved separately. So like if we could go, say you're not ready to vote on this on Monday for all three, but if we could move, we'd like to for sure move on the maintenance and food service van, because that one, that's totally different than this conversation. That's for using throughout district for, like, at the beginning of the school year, we get like bulk supply order at Meyer. So they'll take that and they'll get that, and then they'll deliver it to the schools. They
Don't mess about truck.
school or throughout the 5 buildings every day. They use that truck for that. And you could probably do, food service uses it to move food from building to building a couple times a week also.
Yeah.
Their
Their meals with that.
Technology uses it? Okay. The technology.
Where do you currently have these funds being allocated from?
This one, the 36-2 was not currently in the budget that you passed already. So that would be looking into, that being an additional amount in the budget. The 75-2, we do have earmarked in the budget that was passed.
So the cargo van, we'll call it, you're asking for that out of general funds?
Right.
So what we approved before on the vans was just for you to go out to RFP? Is that what the last vote we did on the vans?
I think, well, originally it's in the budget. So we talked about it in the budget.
I know, we voted on it a couple times, so I'm trying to just.
So that's where the money's earmarked in there. And then we've talked about it again.
I thought we voted on it.
Hey, we're gonna go put it out for an RFP and see,
Okay.
that's kind of where we left it. So then we put the RFP out, we only got one bid back.
Okay,
So we did get a bid back, now that's what we're bringing to you to tell you what that bid was.
so now you actually are getting us ready to vote on to actually buy it.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
It's a budget.
Okay. Okay.
You asked a bunch of questions, and now we're waiting on the RFP.
But it's 2 passenger and 1 cargo,
Right,
so 3 total.
right.
Our current motion that is tabled is for the 2 vans.
Okay.
So we can either open up another topic, another, presentation or discussion topic for the cargo van. Or someone could amend this
And add it.
and add it to it.
Okay. That next week, right?
Yes.
Just out of curiosity, so if we were to outsource transportation, who would be maintaining these vans?
I think that would be good.
Do we?
Be the dealership.
That's what I'm saying though, like you have to, you know.
Billy has already mentioned to us that even if we, do some type of agreement with third-party transportation, we use the bus garage for more than just parking buses. There's oil changes, there's different types of other things that the oil changes was the biggest one.
Yeah, no, exactly. Even at night, that's where we park our plow trucks. So
Yeah.
we have the whiteouts, and when those all fall off, so everything works great in the morning. So that's nice warmed up car. We use it for that. Yeah, the oil changes, we do that in there. Anything, we're always messing with the 4-wheel drive, and that's all done in there.
Are we still doing the fire department?
Um,
Are we still servicing? the-
yes, yes.
And then they come out and help.
We don't have to supply them materials or anything, we just lend them the space so that they can pull that big rig in there. They have promised to burn our ditch for us, because the fence is dry, I haven't asked them to do that, but we usually do that every couple of years, and they do that without any cost or any obligation we have to fulfill.
Nice.
So we'll bring back the insurance, either be liability or, medical.
Yeah.
And we'll bring that information back for the next meeting, next week. And, actually, we'll try to get that to you before the meeting, so you can.
Yes, that'd be great.
Only to get to the meeting next Monday.
Thank you.
Okay?
And let's just go ahead and say now, we'll put the cargo van as a separate discussion.
Yeah.
We'll just keep the two different in case,
Seems like it makes it cleaner.
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
So we'll put that as a different discussion item. We'll bring that up next week.
Yes.
Just one more thing on that cargo van. Is there a timing issue or that you need to get that purchased in this fiscal year? Or could it be something that would fit into next? I mean, is the one you're using now gonna last another couple months?
Another couple months?
I'm not saying, I'm just wondering.
No, it's, the brakes are squeaky, and then Jerry wound up replacing the brakes, the brake pads, the brake lines.
Yeah.
The brake lines,
Better resale van.
it's one of those things.
Well, and plus the fact that it's gonna take 3 months,
Yeah, it's October.
then
Yeah.
we'd like to have it back before we get into next school year.
That cargo van is the same timeline as the rest of them.
I think we're done.
Right.
What did it say there on
It
It
seems-
says,
It says 10/31.
For the other one, for the third one?
the, yeah,
yeah, if you noted in here, because it said list if there's anything that they can't do.
He said they're scarce right now.
Who was this three?
This is actually,
Swing has really bad inventory.
He's my teacher. Coding skills.
It's fantastic.
Before I did the RP, just to kind of get an idea of what this even looks like for a price. And then we did put the RP out, and I did email my contact link before, but they did not bid on it.
Do they not want to bid on it?
I don't think, I talked to another, when I was doing my first research, I talked to another dealership up in Grand Rapids. And when I told them about the RFP process, he practically laughed and he said that you'll have the hard press to get many dealerships that'll spend the time to write an RFP through there and stuff. They just don't take the time to do that for the purchase, because then we'll get them, a lot of schools don't, follow through or don't make the purchase or whatever, but it's a lot, in his opinion, it's a lot of work to do and it's not worth it.
So although I do love Lake Before, I have purchased a lot of vehicles from there. I think they will state themselves, they are not a commercial location. I would ask if you would be ever so, diligent to call up to Fox Ford in Grand Rapids.
So we can't go back, we can't get more bids on those and put the RFP out again, because we've already put the RFP out for that length of time. How the Detroit one got it is I posted it on the state, there's a state bid site where you can go out and you can put anything out there that you want to bid, and then everybody around the state, or even out of the state, but anybody can go to that site and look, like say I'm a car dealer, right? I can check that site as often as I want to see how many people have vehicle bids out there, and then bid on it. Right. Now, if we, the only way we can do this is put the RFP back out, and then we could personally email it to that dealership, but
Are we within our rights to go through the request for bid process and say, okay, this is a legitimate price, allocate those funds, but then make a purchase for the same or less from somewhere else?
Good question.
No, because not only are we voting on the price, but we're voting on the company, everything that on that piece of paper. So, awesome, thank you very much, we'll put the van, quote in a cargo van, whatever we need.
Yes.
And, this is a topic for next week, and we'll decide on that. Moving on, 3.05, real estate property acquisition. At this point, I would make a motion to go into closed session,
I'll second that.
seconded by Abby.
I'm just gonna mute the sound and camera.
Ms. Jones.
Okay, yeah. Abby,
Yes.
Sarah, yes. Dana, Jeff,
Yes.
Tim, Dawn.
Yes.
I'm gonna ask that. For the
And you're back.
All right, thank you, everyone. Sorry it took so long. So at this point, I would like to make a motion to have our realtor, Chip Springer, move forward with negotiations on behalf of Pennfield High School.
I second that.
Whenever you're ready, Mr. Jones.
Okay, and then to call roll on that, Dana,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Tim.
Yes.
Dawn,
Yes.
Abby,
Yes.
Sarah, yes.
Thank you very much. 4.01, comments from the public. I don't see anybody. We are going to move on to 5.01, comments from our superintendent.
Yes, I will make sure to keep these short, since it's been a long night. I appreciate the work that the board has done with this agenda. As a reminder, the state superintendent for instruction has to have the state MSTEP and the scores to be waived where they wouldn't have to test. And then that was denied by the U.S. Department of Education. So kids are testing this week, the MSTEP, PSAT, SAT. So what they did approve was that those scores will not be used as accountability for like a report card grade. So I wanted to make sure to share that even though we're still trying to get kids in for testing, that the waiver was denied at the state level for Michigan and numerous other states. So that's the first thing I wanted to mention. Second thing is congratulations to our athletics. What a season for this winter season. You know, we had bowling, we had a bowler that went out and did a fantastic job with representing our girls basketball. Takes the district champs and going into the regional tournament. Then our boys basketball. I mean, you can't do, oh my gosh, the state finals. And again, they represented very well. And then coach, congratulations to Coach Burns and Peterson for that work that they've done with that team and everybody in that support and representing this community. And I'll leave the rest for everybody else.
Thanks.
Oh, sure. I made a point to get that. Even with the state championship, with the cheerleaders, look great. They, Coach Tucker and that group did a fantastic job with the cheerleading and
Two wrestlers.
the wrestlers. That's right. Yes, and the wrestlers. So what with all the COVID situations going on, for them to be able to fight through and continue to finish in such a strong form was just great. It was just great. Then I'll end with there's a possibility that the Calhoun County Health Department, we're exploring doing a drive-through clinic for 16-year-olds and older. So it's being explored because we're not the only district that's exploring that, to where not only the students, their parents, and anybody in the community will be able to come out and get their vaccination shot. So here on site. So that's being explored because it was just discussed this morning. And I just want to make sure to share that in case that comes out and you go, wait, where did that come from? So that's all I have for tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Simmons. Attached is the 5.02, attached is the Troon law notes for March. Feel free to look at that attachment if you haven't already. 6.01, comments from the board.
I wondered if we could schedule the superintendent, you and I had talked about the articles or for his superintendent evaluation goals. Do you have when do you think we can start working on that? I would be glad to put something together and kind of lead the group through that exercise. Whenever you guys think it will work on the calendar.
So do you think it would be wiser with our time frame to bring it to the committee of the whole
Yes.
in May.
That would be, if you guys are willing, that'd be great. I don't think it will take that long. Once we start walking through it, I think it'll go pretty fast. So if anybody, wants to kind of look through those, goals again at the end of each section, but maybe I can send something out to Kevin and
All right, well, Kevin took all mine with all the sports. Big shout out, the entire boys basketball is at JB Whiskey tonight. I got invited. I appreciate the invite. Obviously couldn't make it, but, everyone, Dawson, the girls basketball, competitive cheer, boys basketball,
what a
Yeah.
great end of the year.
what a winner in, of Panther Nation sports, of all the challenges you guys face as it is, and then all this COVID crud put in there also. I couldn't be more proud. Kevin touched on the health department, the 16 and over now. Look for some, communications on that. Probably last but not least is our bond committee. I want to express again, everyone for the past year and a half, everyone that has had a part in this, to stand up here in the representation and the information and everything that they have prepared, and continuing to reach out to the community, get more and more members to the Thursday meetings. We have 3 community forums scheduled. Almost, invite everyone possible. April 22nd, 29th, and May 6th. Baseball is coming up, so I will do my best to be to those as much as possible. Spring sports start tomorrow.
Have we had to have any changes to the spring sports based on the governor's last week?
We don't have
So we haven't discussed tickets yet. As of right now, the only thing is we were pushed back, I think, 2 weeks. Normally starts, I think, March 7th, and I think we started March 21st this year.
Okay,
So we got pushed back, and most of the coaches worked with athletic director, Mr. Steele, and postponed their start of their schedule to start after spring break.
great.
So
Thank you.
it's condensed. I haven't seen the softball schedule, but I'm assuming the softball schedule follows right with the baseball schedule. We are 3 days a week, double headers, 6 games. It's gonna be a rough one through June 1st. Again, I assume softball is gonna be the same way. I assume soccer is gonna be pretty adamant too, and then track as well. But MHSAA, thank you for representing our student athletes and doing whatever we can to get our sports in.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there anything that the band requires able to do this year end? Have they able to do anything?
Not since the numbers started increasing.
Okay,
I do know that the high school students are going to go perform for the fifth graders this week.
okay,
Just to show them what it's like to be in band.
yeah,
Because
right,
Olivia told me that just today. So she's gonna go up and they're gonna go up and because, like usually, like just has like this 6 or 7 graders.
yeah,
Just because they've had kind of a nemesis strong
Yeah.
year.
That was awesome.
He's already with the high schoolers go down and see them excited to join the game next year.
okay, great.
Speaking of, I actually do have one more thing. Peeking through our bylaws for our streaming. Again, I apologize, everyone. That was a miscommunication on whether we were able to continue streaming or not. We are. It is not an OMA regulation. It doesn't state whether you can or whether you can't. So we have gotten guidance from the state that we will have live stream and we will continue to live stream as long as we can. one thing going through our bylaws that I would ask for all of us to consider is, we have a bylaw in there for a high school student to be a representative on the board.
We've talked about that.
I did not notice this. I would like to probably bring this up, next week and give a high schooler an opportunity to maybe, hang out with the board and come to some board meetings, and they're not able to vote or anything like that, but I'm sure there's a high schooler or two that would.
Should we, like, maybe just make an application process and?
Mhm.
We'll take it from here, but I wanted to touch that. I seen that bylaw, and I personally think it'd be pretty cool to invite a high
We've
school.
talked about it on and off. It would be really cool to finally actually get
Yeah.
it.
So we'll bring this up. Next week meeting is too busy, so maybe we can put it on there.
So I have a question back to the live stream. So one of the things maybe I missed it, but was there a link if people had questions to still live stream in if they had?
No, so the only thing, this is a open meeting. It's an in-person meeting.
So you can leave live stream if they want to